You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Haristadoulou.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristadoulou, and with the championship games for the AFC and NFC in the rearview mirror, it's time to take a short little look back, react to the game. I'll share some thoughts. I invite you all to share yours as well in the comment section down below. We had two pretty eventful games for varyingly different reasons between both of these championship matchups. One going very lopsided, the other one, of course, coming down to the wire, as everyone was hoping and anticipating it would, and now probably expecting as well. But again, I would like to hear from you all in that comment section down below. What were your thoughts on this past weekend's games? Are you excited for the Super Bowl matchup? Do you expect a three-peat by the Chiefs? Do you think the Philadelphia Eagles can get the job done? What of Josh Allen and the Bills, who just cannot beat the Chiefs when it comes down to it, when it matters the most? And then the Washington Commanders, of course, getting stomped out of the playoffs. However, when you look back at the last year for them, picking from number 2 to literally coming number 2 in the NFC side of things, this was quite a worst to, I guess, second best that we have seen in quite some time in the NFL. So I would love to hear from you all on all of those things. But we'll take a look at this very first matchup. Of course, the Philadelphia Eagles absolutely demolishing 55-23 their division rival Washington Commanders. And it started as soon as that second drive for Washington. They go out, they kick the field goal on the first one. Philly answers one play, and this kind of goes back to the issues that they have just had defensively, stopping the run all season long. Barkley gets the ball in his hands, one play, takes it home for 6. Philly goes up 7-3, and then ultimately their response is a fumble that ultimately turns into Philadelphia going up 14-3. It began with that, and then just a handful of mistakes after mistakes that kept snowballing, and it basically turned into a boulder by the time it was even halftime at that point, as Philadelphia found themselves up 27 to 14 at the time, 13 at the time, whatever the actual score was going into that halftime, when they were able to go ahead and get those back-to-back touchdowns again. Unfortunately, the reality is that we saw ourselves, we saw a team that overachieved, played phenomenally up until this point, but overachieved in every sense of the word. Now, what's exciting is that this Commanders team in 1 year with a rookie quarterback was able to flip the script the way they were, and they were able to find themselves just one game away from representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. Now, there is a chance that they could regress, but the reality is also there's a chance that they could improve, that this team could get even better, and they could be far more competitive and ready to take on a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, whose roster, all things considered, is stacked to the absolute brim. The score was 27-12. Just a quick correction on what I said earlier on that. But overall, I'm excited to see what this Commanders team does in the long haul. There are some key pieces on defense that need to be adjusted, especially along the defensive front. 7 rushing touchdowns allowed is never going to lead to a win in any sort of football game. And honestly, it feels like they were lucky to have only allowed 55 points in this game. The Eagles set a championship record of 55 points in this game, the most scored by a team in an NFC championship. So they're lucky that Philadelphia only got as far as they did. And there is some questions now regarding Saquon Barkley and just how healthy he's going to be going into Super Bowl week. If you look back, it started off with that first drive. He hit that, that massive score to get things going. And then from that point forward, working on the calf, using the massage gun, getting it worked on basically the remainder of the game. He ended up only finishing with 15 carries, surprisingly enough. And one has to wonder if maybe that's because that first initial run, maybe he tweaked something, whatever it may be. But the impressive thing is that despite that, they didn't need more than 15 carries from him. Yes, they got 3 rushing touchdowns out of him, but on top of that, you look at what Jalen Hurts did with his 3 scores as well, and just what he was able to do in the passing game. Only about 250 yards passing, and it wasn't like this offense needed to kill their opponents to be able to win the football game, because not only did they find the success that they needed to find on the ground, which was like to the tune of 227 yards collectively as a team, but you also found success, solid success, no mistakes being made in the passing game, and then your defense, which has been a large reason why I've considered Philadelphia the most complete team in the NFL for some time. I got called crazy by a lot of people the final few weeks of the season, keeping the Philadelphia Eagles as my number 1 ranked team in the NFL because of roster construction and just what they were able to do on both sides of the football. And I feel slightly vindicated by that now with them in the Super Bowl right now against the Chiefs for a rematch, but that's beside the point. It's more so that they can beat you in every which way. They can run the football, they can throw the football, or their defense can absolutely suffocate the will out of their opposing offenses. And that is why this Philadelphia Eagles team is in the position that they're in, and they've done it so dominantly on top of that. 55-23 in the second to last game of the season is not something I think anyone really expected. I mean, maybe a diehard Eagles fan would have said something like this, but did anyone really believe that the Eagles are just going to come in and stomp out Washington after 2 really close games that they had the first 2 times they matched up, with Washington even taking the W the second time they played against each other? This was as surprising of an outcome, even for somebody like me, who again speaks so highly of Philadelphia, loves what they do on both sides of the football. Their coaching staff has been unbelievable as well. Vic Fangio is putting together a masterclass on that defensive side of the ball. They have contributors, both young and old, inexperienced and inexperienced on that defense, and it's paying dividends for them. And even despite the fact that they've lost guys like Nolan Smith Jr. along the way, they have other guys stepping up. And, you have the story of Zach Bond on that defense, who went from being a special teamer to literally an all-pro outside linebacker for this Philadelphia Eagles team, with 2 rookies in Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mitchell that are helped leading the revolution, you might as well call it, in the secondary over there. Philadelphia is built to win this game. But like I said initially, do not sleep on Washington and what they've been able to do to this point in the last year of basically flipping an entire roster, bringing in a new coaching staff, a new front office, and being able to make it to the NFC Championship game. There's plenty to like about the Commanders and what they have going forward. Ultimately, though, a younger, inexperienced team came away with handful of turnovers, inability to finish off certain drives and get 6 rather than settling for 3. And you basically saw the story of 2 teams that are just in 2 very different places right now. Cinderella run on one side versus a team that is literally built top to bottom to be the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. And I'm excited to see how Washington tries to close that gap, because unfortunately, there is probably a decent amount of work that needs to be done, and I don't even know if it'll be as soon as next year that Washington could close the gap, but I do think that they're well on their way. The other game that we need to look at, and this one's going to, I'm sure, have a ton of conversation around it, especially when it comes to some of the questionable calls that happened in this game. We have the Chiefs going over the Bills 32-29 in what was one of the more exciting football games that I think we've had basically all season, all things considered, with so much on the line. It was another one of those classic Mahomes versus Josh Allen matchups, and this is the 9th time that these 2 quarterbacks have met. This is the 4th time that they've met each other in the playoffs, and Patrick Mahomes keeps his record perfectly clean at a nice 4-0 against Josh Allen. Obviously, the post-game press conference, you saw the look on Josh Allen's face. You saw his just the way he was clearly upset and sick and tired of losing to the Chiefs when it matters most. We've seen this story time and time again where the Bills, they can get the job done in the regular season. They look like the better team in the regular season. And this year they looked like the better team by a somewhat significant margin. But ultimately, when it matters most, the Kansas City Chiefs tend to get it done. Now, I try to stay away from the officiating narrative and the questionable calling and things like that. I will will willingly at least acknowledge the fourth down that got called a failed fourth down conversion. Based on the angles that I saw and just using common sense, I will say that I do think Josh Allen did get that first down, and if that swings the game one way or the other, we'll obviously never know. That was probably my biggest gripe from that game. Beyond that, I don't really have too much of a problem with the rest of the officiating in that game, but I do think that fourth down call, and the reality is that you have the official that's facing Josh Allen's back that's calling the spot. And then on top of that, you also have camera angles that are blocked, and you are seeing, Josh Allen get stopped in certain ways. Like if you're looking for like a direct line of sight from where Josh Allen is to the line of scrimmage, I know there's like overhead shots and things like that, but the shot that you want that is like a direct shot from one side of the chain to the other side of the chain, and that first down marker gets blocked by Chris Jones, where you see Josh Allen with the football. So if the ruling on the field is a failed fourth down conversion and you have a situation like that, it is unfortunate. Again, I know there were overhead angles and things like that we saw as well that you could maybe deduce, all right, well, maybe he was across the line of scrimmage there, depending on how you're looking at it. I get that. I really do. But the shot that you needed to basically say, okay, Josh Allen crossed the line of scrimmage, the one shot you needed, Chris Jones is literally standing right in the way when he crosses the line. And unfortunately, if you don't have a definitive shot like that, ruling on the field is always going to stand, and it is what it is. Now, beyond that, the actual game itself and the football matchup, I mean, the Bills looked phenomenal in this one here. Once again, you had 2 touchdowns from Josh Allen. You had 2 touchdowns from James Cook. There were some early mistakes, and it just felt like jitters that were maybe getting in the way of Buffalo early on, and that led to that 21-10 lead that Kansas City had. But being able to kind of collect yourself, especially in the second half, and really put it together when you needed to, was impressive work by the Bills. The score that they had right before the end of the first half to cut down on that lead was massive for them. Talk about an absolute strike from Allen to Mac Hollins, who Mac Hollins as a whole had himself a pretty awesome game. Yes, only 3 receptions, but 73 yards, and a lot of those yards when it mattered absolutely most, including that score. This was really a team effort, as we're looking at, 9 different guys all together having a target and reception go their way. I mean, this has been the story of this Bills team. It was Josh Allen leading a group of guys, no true real number one threat on the offense besides Josh Allen, who was essentially your number one, and you fall just short against Kansas City. And on Kansas City's end, I think there's 2 things that you can look at that the Bills have done in recent memory that they're unfortunately still kind of paying for. And the most recent one is the Xavier Worthy situation, who, yes, he might not be exploding across the league the way Tyreek Hill is right now, but he is showing his flashes and his ability to make plays and be disruptive against defenses. He had 6 receptions for 85 yards and a score, and he's honestly become more than just a deep threat guy. Like, he's doing a lot of different things, and he's making big catches in big moments. And at this stage in the season where, yeah, you're a rookie at this point, but at the same time, you're basically a 1-year seasoned vet, especially now having played more games than most rookies get to in their first season, being this deep into the playoffs. He is making plays when it matters most, and he's becoming an excellent complement. You have the 1-2 punch that you've been getting out of Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, and shout out to Kareem Hunt, who's running like it's still 2017, 2018 Kareem Hunt with the Chiefs the first time around. The fact that he is on this team and being the difference maker that he is quite the sight to watch. But it really comes down to just the execution, the lack of mistakes that get made by this Kansas City Chiefs team that everyone just seems to be unable to really figure out. The Chiefs, from the front office to the coaching staff to the actual roster itself, is such a well-executed, well put together and buttoned up organization, and that is why the Chiefs are in the position that they are in. Yes, it is very easy to point to some of the officiating blunders that probably have gone their way every now and again, but you also have to take a look at the fact that they are in all of these situations for a reason. Yes, you can sit here and spell out that this Chiefs team could have been 9-8 or maybe 8-9 had it not been for a handful of plays. A lot of people I see go back to like the blocked field goal against Buffalo, or maybe like phantom PIs being missed and things like that. But the reality is, a football team that is where the Chiefs are right now is not going to get to this position by just officiating alone. They have to be a good football team. They have to have a great coaching staff. They have to have great decision making being made in the front office. And when you look at the way this team is built, so much money is put into Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, and then you have a bunch of guys that are all making decent money, but not anything near what those two guys are making. It's like a two-man, very heavy at the top. Oh, Travis Kelce as well as the other guy. You have like those three guys at the top of the roster that a ton of money is going to, but the rest of it is finding guys that are strong contributors that aren't making massive money but have filled out the roster and are playing extremely well. You have a bunch of guys that are still in their rookie deals. You look at like Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis, who are massive contributors on the defensive side but are being paid nothing right now. The Chiefs are a roster building, organizational building masterclass, and I know it sounds like I'm glazing out of my mind right now, if you want to call it that, but this is just the reality of where the Chiefs are. You don't have this type of sustained success just because of officiating. That would be lunacy. That would mean that any team in the NFL could actually do this, and that's not the case. You have to be built well to find yourselves in situations like the Chiefs are. And from the top to the bottom of this roster, they are built extremely well, both offensively and defensively. They've got a fantastic coaching staff with one of the best defensive coordinators in NFL history, in my eyes, in Steve Spagnuolo. You have one of the best, if not arguably the best, offensive-minded coach in the NFL's history in Andy Reid. They are greater than the sum of their parts, and their parts are unbelievable. So this is where the Chiefs stand. One game away from setting up a three-peat, and selfishly, as a fan of the NFL, I want to see the Chiefs get it done. I don't know if they're going to be able to get it done, though, because they have a very good Eagles team that I'm sure has a bit of a sour taste in their mouth from the last time these two teams met in the Super Bowl. The one hope that I have for this game that we get in a couple of weeks is that when Philadelphia and Kansas City meet, it is on a football field that is well taken care of, because the last time these two teams met and faced off against each other, that field was a literal disaster, and it basically wiped out any bit of effect that defenses had in that football game. Both of these teams are predicated off their defenses, and I do think are a large reason as to why they are in the situation they are. Maybe you give Saquon Barkley in the run game in Philadelphia a little bit more credit than you would the Chiefs offense in their current situation, because they have not been perfect, but they've done a great job at least protecting the football when it matters most. But you have two defenses that are really going to get the opportunity to A, prove themselves and also earn themselves some money come this offseason, winning them a championship. So that's all I'm really hoping for coming out of this game. I think that the two best teams in the NFL made it to the Super Bowl. It's basically how I felt all year long. I think I finished the year with the Chiefs ranked as number 4, and my biggest concern was just, would they be able to, despite the firepower that they seem to not have, because I believe they hadn't scored more than 30 points up to this point in the season coming into this game against the Bills here, would they be able to continue to just not make not make mistakes at all, because they hadn't turned the ball over since the last time they played the Bills? Would they be able to continue to play that type of football and be able to outman some of the teams that have more talent? And in this case, they were able to find a way to get it done because they are the AFC reps in the Super Bowl this year. So I would love to hear from you all. Let me hear your thoughts down below. There's so much that you can look at with all of this. And for me, where do the Bills go from here? At this point, this was supposed to be the team, as it has supposed to been the last handful of times that the Bills have played the Chiefs in the playoffs. I think you look no further than the Chiefs letting the Broncos beat them back in week 18 to prevent the Bengals from getting into the playoffs, because that is a team that I'm worried about for the Kansas City Chiefs' sake going down the road, because if that defense can figure it out over there, it's a far more threatening team, and that's the team that you always are going to have to ask what if about this season. So where do the Bills go from here? What can the Chiefs get it done? The Eagles, is their defense ready to shut down what is already a historical situation, with the Chiefs being the first team to make it to the Super Bowl in a three-peat attempt? But also on top of that, just can this team stop history dead in its tracks with this massive narrative of the officials and the Chiefs versus everybody else? I'm very excited for what the next 2 weeks are going to lead to, and I'm very excited for that final game. So let me hear from you all. Fire away in that comment section down below. I would love to hear from you, and we can all chit-chat and discuss. Channel's going to take a little bit of a shift as we get now into the slower portion of my season, I guess you could say, because picks and power rankings take up a lot of my time during the season. We're going to be getting more news. We're going to start talking free agency, start talking draft. Plenty to come your way. But as always, if you made it to the end, greatly appreciate it. I will see you all next time. Have a good one.